For those of you who are always on the go, remember mindful moments.
Bite-sized knowledge, right?
Exactly. Perfect for those mental snacks throughout the day. Narrated by AI, too. Welcome in, everybody, to another deep dive. Grief. It's something none of us can escape, but we don't always see it coming. And it doesn't always look the way we expect.
That's so true.
Today, we're going to explore that unexpected side of grief.
Okay.
Through the lens of Sloane Crosley's memoir, Grief is for People.
Sounds fascinating.
It is. She shares her own journey of grappling with loss, and not just the loss of a close friend, but also the loss of something that on the surface might seem a lot less significant.
Right.
Jewelry stolen in a burglary.
Interesting combination.
Yeah, and it really is. So we're going to kind of unpack how Crosley connects these two seemingly very different experiences and what it reveals about the kind of sneaky ways grief can work its way into our lives.
The way those things intertwine can be really surprising.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
A break-in at Crosley's apartment. The thief makes off with some jewelry, including pieces she inherited from her grandmother.
Oh, wow.
An amber amulet. And here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
A green tourmaline ring.
I love that you're bringing in these specific pieces.
Yeah, it makes it feel so real.
It does.
And what's so interesting is that Crosley's grandmother, by all accounts, wasn't a very nice person.
Oh.
But those stolen pieces, particularly that ring, they still carry a weight for her. It makes you think about, that strange power objects can have. They become almost like vessels for our memories and our emotions, even when they're tied to, relationships that were complicated or even difficult.
It's true, We imbue objects with meaning, and that meaning lingers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Crosley even jokes about the jewelry being cursed.
Oh, wow.
And as if things weren't unsettling enough, she starts to wonder, could her novel about a jewel heist have inspired the crime?
Oh, that's a little unnerving, isn't it?
Yeah, it speaks to that vulnerability we feel after a violation like that, right?
Right.
You kind of go into a bit of paranoia, looking for explanations, even if they seem a little far-fetched.
Exactly, trying to make sense of it all.
And that sense of unease, it only intensifies when she watches the security footage with the detective and her superintendent. And they discover this thief was incredibly meticulous, bypassing other entry points, going straight for her apartment.
So targeted.
Yeah, it wasn't random.
That adds a whole other layer, doesn't it?
It does. Suddenly it feels so personal. It makes her question her sense of safety, and it just amplifies that need to find those missing pieces.
You can imagine that feeling of needing to reclaim something that was taken.
Absolutely. And Crosley doesn't just, sit back and wait for the police.
Right.
She dives headfirst into this quest to find her jewelry.
Wow.
She visits pawn shops. She scours online marketplaces. She chases every lead she can find. That's
dedication.
It is. And it really shows the lengths we'll go to reclaim what's been lost, especially when those objects hold sentimental value.
It's more than just the thing itself, isn't it?
Exactly. It becomes about regaining a sense of control, making sense of a situation that feels so chaotic and deeply personal.
Absolutely.
And, it reminded me of a story Crosley tells about a woman she met at a dinner party who spent 5 years tracking down a stolen brooch.
Wow.
And eventually found the thief in prison.
That's incredible.
It is. It just goes to show how deeply these objects can matter to us.
They become almost extensions of ourselves in a way.
Right. How they become these tangible representations of our memories and connections.
Yeah. And sometimes the search is just as important as finding the object.
Absolutely. So now enter Russell Crosley's friend. He had this unique fascination with objects. He saw them as having a soul.
Interesting.
He's actually the one who found this antique spice cabinet where Crosley stored her jewelry.
Okay.
So when she tells him about the burglary, she expects him to be fixated on these stolen pieces.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's not what happens.
Really?
Instead, he gets fixated on a seemingly insignificant detail: the removal of the eggshells from the spice cabinet.
The eggshell.
It's such a strange thing to focus on, but it provides a glimpse into Russell's personality. His discomfort with sadness and his tendency to kind of latch on to the tangible aspects of a situation, rather than delving into those deeper emotions.
He's trying to find a way to make sense of it in his own way.
Exactly. It's like he's trying to impose order on this chaos.
Yeah, I can see that.
Focusing on what can be observed and categorized, rather than the messy emotions of loss and violation.
Interesting. So it's about objects again.
Exactly. And this focus on objects, it hints at his unique perspective.
Yeah.
Seeing them as repositories of stories and experiences, almost as if they have lives of their own.
I like that. Objects with souls.
And this connection between Russell and objects, it becomes even more poignant as the story unfolds. But for now, let's just say that burglary leaves Crosley reeling. And then she's hit with another, even more devastating blow.
Oh, no.
Russell's suicide.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
It is. And it really marks a turning point in the narrative. It plunges Crosley into what she describes as cumulative grief.
Cumulative grief.
Yeah, the loss of her friend. It amplifies the grief she's already experiencing from the burglary, creating this really complex and overwhelming emotional landscape.
So it's like the grief builds upon itself.
Exactly. And those two events, the burglary and Russell's death, they become interwoven in her experience, creating this ripple effect that touches every aspect of her life.
That makes me wonder, can different types of loss, even those that seem completely unrelated, actually compound and amplify our experience of grief?
It's a really good question. And Crosley seems to suggest that they can.
Yeah.
And this idea makes you think about how we process loss and how it shapes our understanding of the world.
I'm curious to hear more about Russell. What was he like?
Crosley and Russell, despite their differences, they had a deep connection. She paints him as someone who loved objects, hated sadness, and was deeply ingrained in the publishing world.
Interesting. So the objects tie in again.
And their shared history in publishing it becomes a key part of their bond. They've witnessed the industry's ups and downs together, experienced moments of excitement and disillusionment.
Okay.
This shared professional journey, it just adds another layer of complexity to their relationship, and it deepens this sense of loss Crosley feels after his death.
Shared experiences can really shape a bond.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they even had dinner just a week before Russell's death. And they talked about the stolen ring.
Oh, wow.
It's a small detail, but it takes on a whole new meaning in light of what happens next.
It's like a foreshadowing almost.
It is. It becomes this poignant reminder of their shared history and the fragility of life. Crosley's inability to recover that ring, it mirrors the permanence of Russell's absence.
It really highlights the things we can never get back.
Exactly. And there's this other detail that just really stuck with me. Crosley mentions Russell's final Instagram post. A photo of wildflowers taken just hours before his death.
It's a stark contrast, isn't it?
It is.
The beauty of those flowers against the backdrop of what we know happened.
It's heartbreaking. And Crosley talks about feeling so isolated in her grief, particularly because Russell's death was a suicide.
It adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
The stigma surrounding suicide, it often makes it difficult for people to talk openly about their grief, to seek support.
Right.
And it creates this sense of loneliness and isolation, as if their experience is somehow different or shameful.
It's a grief that often comes with a lot of silence.
Yeah. And Crosley, she describes feeling disconnected from other mourners, struggling to find solace in those traditional support systems that are often available after a loss.
But they don't quite fit in those spaces.
Exactly. And as Crosley tries to navigate this complex emotional landscape, she turns to New York City, using it as this kind of backdrop for processing her grief.
Oh, yeah.
It becomes more than just a setting.
I see.
It transforms into this metaphor for loss resilience and the passage of time.
That's interesting. How does that play out?
Well, she has this, fascinating relationship with New York City. She feels both connected to its energy and detached from its relentless pace.
I can relate to that.
And this duality, it kind of mirrors her internal struggle as she grapples with grief while trying to maintain a sense of normalcy in a city that never stops.
You get swept up in it.
And she draws these parallels between the city's resilience in the face of events like 9/11
Right.
and her own attempts to find her footing amidst loss.
Hey, yeah.
New York City, with its history of tragedy and rebirth, becomes this symbol of strength and the possibility of moving forward, even in the face of profound sorrow.
There's a sense of hope in that, isn't there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like she finds a strange comfort in the city's enduring spirit, its ability to absorb these immense tragedies and still keep going.
I see.
And it reflects this, universal human experience, the need to find hope and resilience even in the darkest of times.
That's powerful of it.
And she even talks about specific locations and moments in the city that are intertwined with her memories of Russell, emphasizing how our surroundings can become imbued with emotional significance.
Like those places hold a piece of the person.
A particular street corner, a favorite cafe, a park bench, all these places become repositories for memories both joyful and sorrowful.
They become like landmarks in the landscape of grief.
Exactly. And this brings us to what I find one of the most thought-provoking aspects of Crosley's story. This idea of material objects as emotional anchors.
Oh,
It goes beyond simply wanting her stolen jewelry back.
I see.
It's about reclaiming a part of her past, of her connection to Russell and her grandmother, even if those connections are complicated.
It's about the meaning they hold.
Right. And her relentless pursuit of those missing pieces, particularly that green tourmaline ring. It speaks to the symbolic weight we often attach to objects.
Right.
They become more than just possessions. They transform into these tangible links to the people and experiences that have shaped our lives.
They become a way to hold on to those memories.
And it's almost as if by finding these objects, she's somehow keeping those memories alive.
Yeah, I can see that. And this idea is further reinforced by Russell's belief that objects have a soul.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That they represent the people who own them.
Yeah.
It blurs the lines between material and emotional value, suggesting that objects can become vessels for our memories and emotions.
I'm thinking about objects in my own life now that have that kind of meaning.
Me too.
Eh.
And there's one recovered piece that really highlights this idea. A tiger's eye ring. It might not be the most valuable piece, but it holds a particular significance for Crosley.
Okay.
The recovery of the tiger's eye ring, a piece she received as a gift. It represents a small victory in the midst of a sea of loss. It's a tangible reminder of Russell's presence in her life, and it speaks to the power of persistence, the refusal to let go of hope.
That's a beautiful sentiment.
But what's interesting is that the ring, though recovered, isn't in its original condition. The stripes on the tiger's eye have been altered during a previous repair. They were originally vertical, but are now horizontal. It's a subtle change, but it represents a shift.
Oh.
A reminder that nothing can ever truly be restored to its original state.
Things change.
Exactly. And this detail, it subtly reinforces this idea that loss is permanent even when we recover what we thought was gone. And it connects to a recurring theme in the memoir, this dream imagery of the jewelry being returned damaged.
Oh.
It's haunting imagery.
It really is.
It speaks to the way grief can alter our perception of the past.
Right. Like the memories themselves have been touched by the loss.
Yeah. The damaged jewelry becomes this metaphor for the lasting impact of loss on our memories and perceptions. Even recovered objects like those fragmented memories can feel incomplete or altered, reflecting the indelible mark that grief leaves on our lives.
It changes us.
As Crosley continues to grapple with her grief, she stumbles upon this unique art installation that resonates deeply with her experience.
Right?
It's called The Vertical Earth Kilometer by Walter de Maria.
I've heard of that.
And this connection to the vertical Earth kilometer, it's profound. This art installation, it consists of a brass rod driven a kilometer into the earth,
Right.
disappearing from view with no guarantee of reunion or resolution. And Crosley, she draws this powerful parallel between this one-way journey into the earth and the finality of loss.
Oh, wow.
It's a powerful image.
It is.
And it becomes even more poignant when she later finds a broken gold chain, the other half of which, as we recall, contained a locket with Russell's photo.
Oh, right. I remember that locket.
The discovery of the broken chain,
Yeah.
particularly one holding a locket with Russell's photo. It's a pivotal moment. This collision of the two seemingly separate narratives,
Yeah.
the burglary and Russell's death.
Okay.
It forces Crosley to confront the full weight of her grief, the permanence of his absence.
That's heavy.
And this discovery, it leads her back to the vertical Earth kilometer, that art installation with the brass rod driven deep into the earth, never to be seen again.
It's coming full circle.
By connecting the broken chain to this artwork,
Yeah.
Crosley seems to be acknowledging that she can't reverse or undo what has happened. There's a sense of letting go, of accepting the finality of loss.
And that can be both heartbreaking and freeing at the same time.
It's like she's finally releasing the need to find closure, or a definitive answer to the question of why. She's accepting the ambiguity and learning to live with the open wound of grief.
That's a powerful realization.
It is. And there's another layer to Crosley's story that adds a different dimension to her exploration of loss. The James Frey memoir scandal.
Oh, right. I remember that.
The inclusion of the James Frey scandal, it adds this intriguing layer to Crosley's narrative.
How so?
What represents a professional disillusionment that both she and Russell experience, mirroring their personal grief in a subtle yet powerful way. You know, it highlights how different forms of loss, both professional and personal, can intersect
Yeah.
and contribute to a broader sense of disappointment and disillusionment.
For those who might not be familiar, can you remind us about the James Frey scandal?
Sure. So Frey's memoir, A Million Little Pieces, It was this huge success, even championed by Oprah Winfrey.
Right, right.
But then it was revealed that he had fabricated parts of his story, leading to this massive public outcry and this reassessment of the boundaries between truth and fiction in memoir writing.
The whole publishing world was shaken.
It really was. And for Russell, who initially championed Frey's seemingly authentic voice, the scandal led to a sense of disillusionment with the industry's tendency to prioritize sensationalism over substance.
He felt let down.
Yeah, it's almost as if Russell is grieving the loss of the belief that truly authentic voices can be heard and celebrated in a system that often prioritizes profit and marketability.
Yeah.
And you see that disillusionment play out in his own work as well.
Really?
He becomes more cynical, less invested in the industry, and this sense of professional disappointment. It seems to mirror Crosley's personal struggle with the burglary and the violation she feels.
I see a parallel there. It's like both events, the scandal and the burglary, they shake their sense of security and trust in the world around them.
Exactly. And then Crosley shares this story about receiving a bloody tooth in the mail.
What?
Presumably from a reader outraged by the Frey scandal.
That's disturbing.
It is. It's this chilling detail that speaks volumes about the blurring of boundaries between public and private life, particularly in the age of social media and heightened online scrutiny.
People take things to extremes. That detail really highlights the potential for personal attacks and the unsettling ways in which public events can spill over into our private lives.
Exactly. It creates this sense of vulnerability and fear. And speaking of going to extremes, Crosley's determination to recover her grandmother's stolen necklace. It takes her to some pretty interesting places.
Like where?
Including this hidden jewelry exchange above a fish tank store in New York City.
Above a fish tank store? That sounds like something out of a movie.
It does,
Yeah.
right? You can almost feel this shift in the narrative as she enters this clandestine world.
Yeah.
A place where the rules of everyday life are suspended.
Interesting.
It's like she's stepping into an underworld, a hidden pocket of the city where anything is possible.
I'm picturing it now.
The way she describes the people she meets there, the atmosphere of the place, it's like she's become a detective in her own right, navigating a shadowy world in pursuit of a tangible link to her past.
She's on a mission. Her determination to recover that necklace, it takes her to unexpected places.
It does, highlighting her resourcefulness and willingness to go to great lengths to reclaim what was lost.
And her persistence pays off.
It does. She gets the necklace back.
Wow.
But then, just as she's starting to find some peace, she stumbles upon something else in her apartment. The other half of that broken gold chain with Russell's picture in it.
Yeah.
Remember the locket we discussed earlier?
Yeah.
The reappearance of the broken chain. It's this pivotal moment. A collision of the two seemingly separate narratives of the burglary and Russell's death.
It all comes crashing together.
It forces Crosley to confront the full weight of her grief, the permanence of his absence.
And how does she react to this discovery?
Well, it leads her back to the vertical Earth kilometer. That art installation with the brass rod driven deep into the earth, never to be seen again.
She's drawn back to that image of finality.
By connecting the broken chain to this artwork, Crosley seems to be acknowledging that she can't reverse or undo what has happened.
Acceptance.
There's a sense of letting go, of accepting the finality of loss.
Which can be heartbreaking, but also in a strange way, liberating.
Exactly. It's like she is finally releasing the need to find closure or definitive answer to the question of why. She's accepting the ambiguity and learning to live with the open wound of grief.
It's a powerful realization.
It's powerful stuff. And it brings us to this really important takeaway from Crosley's story. Grief doesn't have a neat ending.
It doesn't.
It's this messy, unpredictable process that weaves itself into the fabric of our lives.
And it often shows up in unexpected ways, connected to these seemingly insignificant experiences. Think about the stolen jewelry, the broken chain, even that bloody tooth in the mail. These seemingly random events, they become imbued with emotional significance.
Yeah. It's like grief has a way of coloring our perceptions and shaping our experiences even when we don't realize it's happening.
Absolutely.
And it's like those objects, they become symbols,
They do.
each carrying a piece of the larger story of loss and resilience.
They become these touchstones for memory and emotion.
Yeah.
Reminding us of the enduring presence of those we've lost and the impact they continue to have on our lives.
So as you think about Crosley's journey, I want you to consider your own relationship with objects and the memories they hold. Is there an object in your life that represents a significant relationship, a tangible link to someone or something you've lost? What is it, and why does it hold such meaning for you?
Yeah, it's a powerful question to ask ourselves. Because those objects often overlooked in our daily lives, they can become such powerful reminders of the people and experiences that have shaped us. They offer this tangible connection to the past, a way to honor the memories we carry with us.
Maybe it's a piece of jewelry, a photograph, a handwritten letter, a childhood toy. Whatever it is, take a moment to reflect on its significance, on the story it tells, on the emotions it evokes. Because in their own quiet way, these objects can help us navigate the complexities of grief.
Reminding us of the enduring power of love, connection, and memory. They serve as these tangible reminders that even in loss, there is beauty, there is meaning, there is a continuation of the story.
And if you're interested in exploring Crosley's unique perspective on grief further, I highly recommend picking up her memoir, Grief is for People. You'll find a link to purchase the book in the show notes.
And as always, if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends. We'll see you next time for another thought-provoking exploration of the human experience.